Okay, let's talk about Leetcode 24, which is swap nodes in pairs. So basically, we're going to be given the head of a linked list. This will be our head, starting at 1. And what we need to do is end up with a new list order, which is 2, 1, 4, 3. And you can see that to get here, we basically have to swap each of these pairs. So 2 has to swap with 1, like that, and 3 has to swap with 4. Okay, so how do we go about doing this? Well, there's a couple of ways you can do it, but ideally, what we want for the most optimal approach is to do this in place. So let's start, and we'll also write the code live. So let's start with a dummy node. We'll call this D for dummy, and dummy's going to point at head. So the next for dummy is the head. And I'll also fire up some code while we do this. I'm going to do this in JavaScript, but you can do it in whatever language you want. Equals next, and the next is pointed to the head. So here we go. And now I'm going to put some arrows between each of these nodes in the linked list. So here we go. Ready? One there. That's point two is pointing to three. Three is pointing to four. And four is pointing to something. It's pointing at null. So that's the end of our list. Okay. And now what we're going to need is we're going to need a previous node, a previous pointer. So I'm going to visualize that with this arrow, which is upside down, and I'll call it previous, and we're going to point it at dummy. So right now we have our previous pointer, and we'll add it to the code here. So I'll say let previous equal dummy. And then we also are going to need the current node, and we'll put that at head. So we'll point that to the head. And in order to show this, I'll put an arrow at 1, and that's cur. And we'll kind of do this iteratively and walk through the code together. So I'll move the code over here for now. And now what we actually want is a while loop, and we want to say while cur and cur.next will run our loop. And why we want this is eventually we're gonna, let's say we had a list of 3. So I'll just move this for now. Pretend it's 1, 2, 3. If we get to the point where we've swapped 1 and 2, so it's 2, 1, 2, 1, 3, and then cur is at 3, if there is no cur.next, right? If there's nothing here, we just want the list to be 2, 1, 3. We don't want to swap it with nothing because then it would be 2, 1, null 3. That doesn't make sense. So we need our loop to run while it's cur and cur.next. So let's put this back over here for now. And basically what we need to do is we need to save reference to a bunch of nodes in our list. So the first thing we want to save is we want to say let next pair equal cur.next.next. So this is how we get the next pair. So you can visualize that as cur next next. So the next pair begins at 3. And to simulate that, upside down arrow again, I will put this pointer here and I'll call that next pair. Next pair. Like that. Okay? And now we're also going to need to save reference to, we don't have to, we could use cur.next, but we'll save reference to the second of the current pair. Second equals cur.next. Little typo there. And what we're going to do is we're going to create another little arrow here, and we're going to set this to second. So now you can see we have our first pair here, and then eventually our next pair begins here. So now we can start our swaps. So what we're going to do is we're going to come into the code, and we're going to say second.next equals cur. So this is to say second.next. So this arrow is going to point at cur. So I'm just going to rearrange this like that. Okay. And then we're going to say cur.next. Oh, can't spell. Cur.next equals next pair. So cur.next, we're going to point this at next pair, which is currently at 3. And I know that that is currently all over the place, but you'll see in a second when I redraw this. From here, we're going to set previous.next equals the second node. So previous, which is at the dummy, next is going to be equal to 2. I'll put this down here. And these arrows look insane right now, but what we're going to do is follow them. So let's look what happens. So right now, dummy was pointed at the head of 1, but now dummy's next is pointed at 2. So dummy, 2, 2 is pointed at 1, and 1 is pointed at 3. So you follow that. Let's do that again. We're going to go this way. The dummy's next is 2, then 1, then 3. Kind of like a fun water slide, right? Okay, now let me redraw this list real quick so we can see what we're working with. Right now at this point, what we actually have is this dummy is pointed at 2, 1, 3, 4. That's what we currently are working with. Now, let's go through and update a couple of our pointers. So I'm going to do that with prev. We'll set prev equal to cur. Okay. And we'll set cur is equal to the next pair. Very simple. So prev equals cur. But at this point, cur is over here. So I'll just do this. And then cur is equal to next pair. So cur was 1, which is currently technically here, right? So we're going to set it equal to the next pair. And we know next pair is at 3. So cur is next pair. And now we're going to go through the loop again because while cur and cur.next. So cur and cur.next. So both of these exist. So we're going to go through the loop again. So let next pair equal cur.next.next. And right now cur.next.next is null. So next pair is going to be at null. Okay. And now second is going to be equal to cur.next, the second of the pair. This is our new pair. And our next pair would technically begin here. And we have reference to our previous. So let me draw up a couple of these arrows. Like this. And like this. Here we go. Oh, this wasn't an arrow. That was a line. Let me give an arrow. This is what our list currently looks like. We're over here. And we're going to say, okay, second.next equals cur. So second.next equals cur. So we're going to swap this arrow. Cur.next equals next pair. So cur.next is the next pair. Next pair is at null right now. You can kind of see what's going on there. And then previous.next is equal to second, which is the 4. And I'll move this. So now, if we go down our water slide one more time, you have dummy pointing to 2, pointing to 1, pointing to 4, pointing to 3, pointing to null. So actually, our list currently looks like this. Oh, not 5, that's 3. So let's continue on with our while loop. So we'll set prev to cur. Prev is cur, which is 3. So it's technically here. Cur is equal to the next pair, which was null. So cur is now outside at null. Right? Next pair is still technically there as well. And second would be here, but we don't ever get there because we don't continue this loop. Because our loop says while cur and cur.next continue the loop. Well, cur is null, so this is false. So at this point, if we return dummy.next, we'll return 2, 1, 4, 3. And there you have it. That's how you do it. This, for me, was a absolute, if I'm being honest, clusterfuck of pointer magic. It's kind of like this funny little water slide that if you follow, you can see how it makes sense. But the trick was actually just saving a couple of pairs. All right. And that's it. Thank you.